Good afternoon. Welcome to Legal Access, brought to you by the McGuire Law Firm. Every Thursday at this time, we get together to give you access to different aspects of the law. Today, we're going to be talking about something that unfortunately most of us have been involved in at one time or another in our life, sometimes multiple times: automobile accidents. Fender benders are one thing, but if you've been hurt in an accident, that brings it up to a whole new level, and that's what we're here to talk about today. If you have any questions about automobile accidents, make sure and give us a call. The phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. Call us today, and on the panel to answer questions for you from the McGuire Law Firm is Ian McGuire.
Good to see you, Dave.
And also from McGuire Law Firm is Brittany Jones.
Dave.
And down to the left, not from McGuire Law Firm, is Rick O'Neill.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's great to have Rick back with us. Rick thankfully comes on a lot and does a great job answering questions. And Rick, let's talk a little about your firm. Obviously, you do auto cases that we're going to be talking about today, and you do workers' comp. But what else does your office do?
We also do criminal defense with an emphasis on DUI defense. And we also represent a lot of the Spanish-speaking residents in the area.
And it's interesting. Rick has a background in law enforcement, although he's been a lawyer for many years, decades now, I guess. But he started off doing law enforcement work, and I know that's been a help and paid off as far as having that background and doing legal work now, right?
Right. Lets me see both sides of a case. When in law school they teach us as law students to take one side of the case and then take the other side. So as a lawyer, we can do that. A lot of times people say, how can you defend people that are accused of a crime? We're used to arrest people for crimes. But, as part of our professional training, we're used to just taking the side and just being an advocate for our client.
It's great to have you back. And as Dave said, the topic today is automobile accidents. But if you have any questions on anything regarding personal injury or workers' comp, we're here to answer your questions. 843-848-8080, 843-848-8080 is our number.
As I mentioned, fender benders are one thing, but when it rises to the level of personal injury, if you've been injured in a car wreck, it's something that you need help with. Explain to everybody why, if somebody's in a car accident and they have some injuries, why they shouldn't handle that themselves.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why you might not want to handle that yourself, but you just don't know what you don't know, and having an attorney who regularly handles these type of things is going to absolutely get you a whole lot farther than you would on your own. If you're injured, there's all different types of things that you can recover for. Actually, even just for the property damage, there's a lot of things that people can recover for that the insurance company, they're a business, they're looking out for themselves, and they're not just going to offer these things up to you. So it's definitely beneficial to sit down with an attorney, especially if you've been injured, and at least see, if you've got a case.
And if it's a case that maybe an attorney doesn't need to handle or want to handle, you still, for the most part, are going to have a free consultation. I say for the most part. I don't know any attorney that does handle those type of cases that doesn't have a free consultation. So it just makes sense to sit down and talk to somebody, or at least get on the phone and talk to an attorney that handles automobile collision cases and really understand what your rights are. Because I can promise you, the insurance companies all have lawyers that are working for them and are making sure that their interests are being protected. So it really makes sense for you to do the same thing.
Well, that's a good point. I think a lot of times people think, well, I don't want to, lawyer up, so to speak, or get an attorney involved unnecessarily. But the truth of the matter is that the insurance company already has an attorney involved. And you might just be talking to the adjuster at first, but their defense counsel is only a phone call away. Right. So you're really kind of just evening the playing field for yourself by hiring an attorney.
Now everybody thinks that, okay, if I'm driving and I'm in an accident, it's the other guy's fault, that there's a case there. But what if you're a passenger in a vehicle and somebody, the other person is at fault, and you're in the passenger, or the driver that you were with was at fault? Do you have a case there too?
Absolutely, yeah. If you're a passenger in a vehicle involved in an accident, you get injured, definitely see an attorney. South Carolina, we're allowed to stack policies, and there's some special stacking rules that go along with you being a passenger as well. So depending on what the policy limits are, you might be able to access other policies as the passenger.
Right. You get a lot of clients that probably say, I don't want to have my insurance company involved in this at all because I don't want my rates going up. If that's the case, what are they missing out on?
Well, you may have what's called PIP, personal injury protection, or MedPay, that even if you have health insurance, will basically pay you for the amount of your medical bills up to whatever limit you have, which would put more money in your pocket out of the total settlement. Most people should also have what they call UIM, underinsured coverage, which will kick in if the other driver doesn't have enough insurance. And the minimum limits in South Carolina are $25,000 per person, and at least half of our cases that we see, the at-fault driver has the minimum amount of insurance, and a couple hours in the hospital could easily approach the $25,000.
Yeah, and that's a good time to mention, if you're getting an insurance policy, make sure you ask for UIM or underinsurance coverage, because as Rick just pointed out, a lot of the time the other driver has minimal or insufficient insurance. So the way to cover yourself and your family is to make sure you get UIM. It's usually not that much more expensive to get it. You just got to ask for it and make sure that you have it on your policy. But we would strongly advise that everybody has UIM in South Carolina in their policy.
Our phone lines are open right now. You see the number on your screen. If you have any questions about automobile accidents, we'd like to answer them for you right now. Let's go to Cherry Grove. Jerry's on with us right now. Hi, Jerry. Thanks for hanging on. What's your question for the panel today?
Yes, thank you. If you loan your car to someone, other words, they borrow it for an errand or something, and they get in an accident and it's their fault, what are the ramifications to the owner of the car that owns the insurance policy when someone else borrows the car and involved in an accident? Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, and that's a fantastic question. Do you want me to start, or essentially, if you can lend your car out, obviously, and if someone else gets in an accident, they are the one who is negligent. So although your policy may be paying out, you personally are not going to be responsible, unless the exception would be if you negligently entrusted your vehicle to somebody. For instance, you knew somebody who had been drinking, and you gave them the keys to your car. You might be found negligent for inappropriate entrustment of your vehicle, a negligent entrustment of your vehicle. But for the most part, Jerry, you lend your vehicle, and the person that is using your vehicle is at fault in an accident. It's only going to affect you in the sense your insurance is going to pay out, but the negligent driver, or the person, if there was a lawsuit, is the person operating the vehicle for the most part.
Right. One thing you should be very careful about is, it seems like a lot of auto insurance carriers these days are being very specific when you either renew your policy or start a new policy as to who in your household is going to be driving that vehicle. And some people will try to omit people that are living in the household that could be a possible driver. Be very careful about that. I've been seeing a lot of cases in the last 2 or 3 years where there's been coverage issues where your car doesn't get fixed because someone that's a resident, maybe even not a relative, a roommate, is living in that household, and you never put them on the policy that they could possibly be a permissive user. So
Yeah, if they're
be real
using
careful
that
about
vehicle on a regular basis, and they're not contractually part of that agreement, as Rick said, you might run into problems. But for the most part, you can lend your vehicle out with the understanding that your insurance should cover any injuries that occur or property damage that occurs when that vehicle is in use, if it's permissively
Right. I agree.
used.
Tell you what, we're going to run to a break here real quick. When we get back, we got lots of time to get you on the air. So if you have any questions about automobile accidents, get your questions in today, and we'll get them answered for you today. 848-8080 is our phone number. It's Legal Access, brought to you by the McGuire Law Firm. All right, we're back. It's Legal Access brought to you by the McGuire Law Firm. Our phone lines are open if you have any questions about our topic today, which is automobile accidents. If you've been hurt in an automobile accident, give us a call today. We'll answer all your questions. We've got Thomas from Conway on with us right now. Thomas, thanks for hanging on through the break. What's your question for us today?
4-point ticket on my driver's license, and I went through a program called EPIC from the solicitor's office. And as I go through the program, it's like $293 for the program. Then another $35, so like money. And then once you do get this piece of paper in your hand, the solicitor's office actually told me, do not tell the insurance company where I got it from. Now, is this piece of paper good for me to call them and tell them that I got the course and help me on my insurance, or just...
Is this the traffic education program that you were in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I don't see any reason why that course shouldn't qualify you for whatever credits you can get, either, I guess insurance credits or for your points. Maybe it's just the fact that you were in the program means that you would have had a ticket, which if you complete the program, it is expunged, but maybe the solicitor's office just doesn't want you to tip off your insurance carrier that you had a ticket that was expunged.
That would be my guess is the reason, Thomas, why they do that, and they're probably actually helping you out by doing that. I agree with Rick. That would be the only reason I can think of that they would give you that advice. So, but I'm glad you did the course, and hopefully that will keep your insurance to a minimum.
Solicitor Jimmy Richardson is very proactive in helping first-time offenders, people that have a clean driving record, with these different diversion programs to keep, whether it's a traffic record or a criminal record, to keep that off your record, give you a second chance so your insurance doesn't go up, you don't get points and so forth. So I'm glad you took available that option.
Speaking of diversion programs, our topic next week here on Legal Access is DUI law. So if you have any questions about that, next Thursday is the day to call us on that. Although we could answer those questions here today because Rick deals with that on a regular basis. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Myrtle Beach right now. Dennis is on with us. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for calling in today. What's your question?
Basically, I was in an auto accident on a trip from Myrtle Beach to visit our sons in Houston. And this was in Georgia, and a vehicle ran a red light and slammed into the side. Now, basically, their insurance company has paid for most of everything, but not everything that was we accrued because of this accident. Like they paid some hotel, but not all the hotels. They paid some rental cars, but not all the rental cars. And I didn't understand why I had to pay myself out of pocket and not be reimbursed for everything. Is there a limit that they're obligated to cover, or should it have been everything that that we incurred because of the accident?
Well, I think this is just the typical nickel and diming that an insurance adjuster does. They'll, throwing it out there just enough to maybe where you'll say, all right, I'm not going to fight over this. We see this time and time again. They have to pay your full damages. They can always argue that your expenses, your bills are not reasonable and necessary. A lot of times they'll just send you a check and say, here, take it or leave it. But I think if you just hold out and, continue and say, no, that's not fair, these are my actual fair, reasonable expenses, a lot of times it'll get to the point where they want to close the claim file more than you want to get your full reimbursement. Mm-hmm. So that may be one option. We find this, a client will come to us and they're offered, let's say, $1,000 for whatever their damages are. The attorney gets involved and they'll offer $3,000, and then we have to file suit because they're still not being fair. And then, a few months down the road, they may be paying $10,000 the fair damages. So it's just an insurance company tactic of settlement. just hold out. If you do have to bring a claim, you're probably going to need a Georgia lawyer if the at-fault driver was in Georgia.
And I'm sure the insurance company
Is taking that into consideration.
taking that into
yes.
consideration. That's going to be a somewhat of a pain for you to have to find an attorney in Georgia and do that. But I think if you proceed with that, if it comes down to it, you should be made whole, because clearly, if you're not at fault and your bills are reasonable, they should do that. Sorry.
I'm sure you guys see the same thing in your office. We see that a lot with people down here on vacation.
Yeah.
They go back to Pennsylvania, Boston, wherever, and the insurance company knows that they're several states away, and if the venue for the litigation is going to be back in South Carolina, and they just test you by giving you more of a lowball settlement offer.
Yeah,
And you could definitely contact an attorney in Georgia, and nowadays with Zoom or different programs, it's very easy to be able to consult with them from another state. So you should still be able to do that. And I would just say that it is normal to, especially for the property damage portion, that you are paying it up front and then getting reimbursed. So that part is pretty standard.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be too concerned with that. But just like Rick and Ian were talking about. Right. You'll want to negotiate and kind of stick to your guns, especially if you've got receipts and all these kinds of things that you can present to them. So.
And be careful you don't sign a release of the damage to the car, because these hotels and stuff are going to be under the property damage coverage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dennis, don't get pushed around. Get some help in Georgia. They should be able to help you out. Speaking of getting help for expenses and stuff like that, a lot of people, if they get into an accident, one of their first concerns is, I need a rental car and stuff like that. Who's responsible for getting a rental? Is it the other driver or your own insurance?
So it's going to depend on what the insurance coverage is, really. There are some policies that don't cover a rental, but if the other driver's car, their policy should cover it initially,
if they're at fault,
yes, if they're at fault. And if they're not, then sometimes we do have to start it out by going through our client's policy. If they've got that coverage available, and then the insurance companies, they subrogate it, they work it out and kind of pay each other back later on once it all gets worked out, the liability.
A lot of people are out on the road right now with ride shares, Uber and Lyft. Are there different rules for Uber and Lyft drivers as far as insurance is concerned, or getting paid out or being covered as far as accidents go?
Well, generally your own personal auto insurance, unless you get a special rider that would cover you, is not going to cover it. They're going to exclude it, exclude any coverage for doing anything, delivering food, picking up riders, and so on. So generally, just to protect their independent contractors, as they call them, these rideshare programs usually have an insurance coverage policy that will protect the passengers and also the driver.
I tell you what, we're going to run to another break here real quick. When we get back, we'll have just under 10 minutes. So if you have any questions about automobile accidents, don't wait any longer. Call us during the break and we'll get you on and answer those questions. The phone number is on your screen. Automobile accidents, that's our topic here today. Legal Access, brought to you by the McGuire Law Firm. Welcome back. It's Legal Assets, brought to you by the McGuire Law Firm. We're talking about automobile accidents today. Got time to get you in. If you call us right now, we can answer your question, whatever it might be about automobile accidents. We do other shows about workers' compensation. Sometimes the two are intertwined depending upon what's going on. So if you're driving and you're working at the same time and you get into an accident and it's the other guy's fault, how does that complicate the case as far as auto or workers' comp goes?
Well, I mean, if you have to get in an accident and you're working and you're not at fault, I suppose it gives you two bites at the apple, because you're going to get the benefits that are required under workers' comp, which there are parameters in workers' comp, so there's some limitations. You don't have pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, which are damages that you can obtain in cases where you're not at fault in a third-party case. So technically, when you finish your workers' comp may have a lien on the settlement of the third-party case or the judgment in a third-party case, but it's usually minimal as far as compared to what you recover in a third party. So it honestly is a way where you potentially can be made whole more so than maybe than if it was just a workers' comp or just a third-party case. I would say if you have that situation, make sure you sit down with an attorney. If it's not handled properly, you may waive your right to that third-party case if you don't proceed properly. But it's definitely a situation where you want to sit down with an attorney, without question, because you would get essentially that 2 bites at that apple,
Right.
I suppose.
Okay, you've been in an accident and you are being marked at fault, but you know that you're not at fault. Can you move forward with any kind of a case, or are you just like dead in the water?
Yeah, certainly you can. By law in South Carolina, the collision report by the trooper is not admissible in a civil case. So, I mean, the troopers and officers do make mistakes from time to time. They get the cars mixed up and the drivers mixed up, and they circle yes and no when it really should be reversed. So the insurance company do go by the collision report when it's in their favor, but even if their driver is circled yes, I mean, they typically, if their driver says, no, I'm the one that had the green light, they completely ignore the report. So, you as a claimant can also just prove by the evidence and witnesses and so forth that no, you're not the one that was at fault. The officer's conclusion was an error, and just move forward on your case.
And the more serious your injuries, the more important I think it is to sit down with an attorney in a case like that. Most of the time, the officers are correct, but we've had cases where our client was found at fault, and we ended up with a seven-figure settlement for the client, where the officers found our client at fault. It happens. It's rare. The officers are usually right. I would say
Right,
more times
right.
than not correct. But if you feel that you weren't at fault, I would absolutely sit down with an attorney and talk to them about it.
And even if you are marked at fault, there's, you may have MedPay or PIP coverage that'll pay your medical bills. We see these type of issues also arise a lot of times in these, multi-car, 4 cars rear end each other, and it's like who hit who first and so on. And so, yeah, those type of things, you definitely should get a free consultation with an auto accident attorney.
Brittany, you mentioned stacking earlier in the show. Explain to everybody what stacking is.
Yeah, so as I said, in South Carolina, we're permitted to stack policies. And so what that means, and it does become especially important in a scenario like Rick was just talking about, where there are multiple vehicles involved. But what it means is if one party's at fault, meaning that they are the one that caused the accident, their policy is going to be the primary recovery, so their policy is going to come first. If you then had insurance on your vehicle, then you can stack your policy on top of that. So that is the coverage that you've paid to have. You get to have the benefit of your policy and stack that coverage. So for example, if the at-fault driver has a $25,000 policy, and say you have a $25,000 policy, well, now there's $50,000 potentially that's available to you by stacking them. And it keeps going. If you have multiple vehicles on your policy, then you could get additional coverage and so on and so forth.
If you have any kind of questions about any kind of automobile accidents, remember free consultations are available pretty much anywhere that you're going to be asking about it. So call somebody and get the questions answered that you have. If you have any further questions, you can email us. legalaccess@wmbfnews.com is our email address. Next week, as I mentioned, our topic is going to be DUI, so we're going to continue on with the motif of driving. That's DUI next week, Thursday, right here on WMBF News. For our panel, we want to thank you for being here today. For Ian McGuire, Brittany Jones, and Rick O'Neill, I'm Dave Priest. We'll see you again next Thursday. DUI will be our topic right here on WMBF News and Legal Access, brought to you by the McGuire Law Firm.
You may wish to consult a lawyer to obtain case-specific legal advice. Information regarding lawyers can be located online or by contacting the South Carolina Bar Lawyer Referral Service, toll-free at 1-800-868-2284. If you are currently represented by an attorney, you should direct all legal questions to your attorney. The nature of any legal issue may depend on a multitude of factors. Therefore, the information provided in this program is purposefully broad and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact and retain an attorney in order to obtain case-specific legal advice.